So I have just bought one of these, and in this video I will give you several reasons why you might want to buy one. I will give you several reasons why you might not want to buy one, and I will also explain why I bought one. At the end I do a couple of little sort of demo things, not a lot, just to give you an idea of what you can do with it. Now, if you haven't seen one of these before, it is a Moog Werkstatt or Werkstatt or a Werkstatt 01. I quite like Werkstatt. It's very Germanic, as the name suggests, so that's what I'll call it. So this made an appearance in 2014 at Moog Fest. And if you had an engineer's pass, you had the delightful job of soldering all the bits and bobs onto a circuit board and putting it in a case. However, Moog has released it as a far easier kit since, and in 2020 I think they released an updated version which included this very important part here, the CV expander. I shall say a little bit more about that in a moment. Now, I'm not going to do a review or anything particularly in depth because it's been around for a lot of years and there are dozens and dozens of videos about the Werkstatt 01 on YouTube. Now, if you are interested in this, check out Moog's YouTube channel because there are 2 playlists devoted to the Werkstatt. Now, if you subscribe to Moog's newsletter, you will have received an email telling you that the Werkstatt is about to be discontinued. Now, I was aware of the Werkstatt many months ago, but I dismissed it at the time. However, when I got the newsletter, it prompted me to take another look at it, and as you can see, I decided to buy one. Exactly why I shall tell you in a moment. It's essentially a very simple synthesizer. It's monophonic. There are a handful of controls, and to be honest, there's very little that is particularly special about it. It comes in a wonderful box like this. It's well packaged, as is all Moog gear, and there are several videos on YouTube explaining how to put the thing together. Now, it is billed as a DIY kit, but essentially all you have to do is put a printed circuit board into this case and screw on the lid. It doesn't get any more difficult than that. So why might you want to buy one? Well, it is a Moog, and it is currently the cheapest Moog synthesizer available. I suspect it will always be the cheapest Moog synthesizer available. We get onto price in a second, however. So if you want a Moog, if you don't have a Moog, if you want one, this is the cheapest way to get one. It is also analog. For people who like analog gear, this is totally analog. It is also semi-modular thanks to the inclusion of the CV expander. And you can connect it to other semi-modular gear and to a modular system if you have one. It is also, as you can probably tell, 1 knob per function, and anything which has 1 knob per function and no menus or no menu diving certainly gets my attention. Now, if you are into electronics, it is also highly moddable. The circuit board has a series of moddable connections along the top, and one of Moog's playlists is devoted to ways in which you can mod the Werkstatt. I believe there is a thriving community of Werkstatt modders. This is not something which I intend to do, but if this is something which interests you, you can mod it in all sorts of different ways, and I think that's very interesting. And perhaps the final reason why you might want to consider getting one of these is, as we hinted at before, the price. So in the US, this typically retails for around $199. Here in the UK, $199 is around £150. That could be a bargain. However, in the UK, for some reason, we seem to suffer a lot by the dollar equals pound syndrome. And the best price I could find this for was £179. Not as good as £150, but perhaps not too bad. But we'll have more to say about price in a minute. So for £179 or $199, this is the cheapest Moog synthesizer you are ever likely to find or to buy. Now, with all that being said, this is going out of production, so if you want one, you might have to buy one fairly quickly. There is also the possibility, although I am in no way, shape or form suggesting this is a good reason to buy one, but as it is going out of production, there's a possibility that demand for it may increase in future years, so it may hold its value. I suspect it may not, but I'm not a financial advisor or a vintage synthesizer expert at all. So why might you not want to buy one? Well, let's start with one of the reasons why you might want to buy one, and that is the price. At £179 or $200, there is still a massive amount of competition out there. The Korg Volca range, for example, costs significantly less than £179 and is arguably significantly more well featured, shall we say. There is also the Korg NewTek NTS1, which is also a sort of DIY kit, although also I believe quite easy to assemble, and that is half the price of a Werkstatt, and it can do more, but it's not Moog. There is also the Behringer Crave, which many reviewers liken to a Moog Mother 32, and that is typically less than £150. There is also Behringer's range of synth modules. They often cost a little bit more than £200, but modules such as the K2, the Pro 1, the Model D, the CAT, and so on, around the £200 or just over £200 region will get you a ready built, fully featured synthesizer, often with more features than this and often with a sequencer and or arpeggiator. And there are other synthesizers such as the Modal Sculpt. Just Google cheap synthesizers or best cheap synthesizers and you will come up with a whole list. So there's a lot of competition, and most of it is about the same price or even less, and on the face of it, it seems to do slightly more, or in some cases rather a lot more, than the Werkstatt. However, as we know, price is not always the only criteria. Having said that, looking at this, you may think, well, it is just a little bit too simple for your money, or not. You may prefer something with a few more features, which is fair enough. And one thing to bear in mind also, it does not have MIDI. Now, one final point which you may want to take into consideration is the fact that you might have to calibrate it. Now, calibration is not the same as tuning. Calibration will ensure that the pitch of the oscillator tracks perfectly between one octave and another. So across a range of 2, 3, 4, 5 octaves, it will play the correct pitch. It does follow the 1 volt per octave protocol. But when I tried it, even the first octave was well out. It was well in the cracks. So to calibrate it, the documentation tells you how to do it, and Moog also very helpfully has a calibration video. You need to remove the top, and there is a little trim pot which you have to adjust, and this is very, very sensitive. It is probably best calibrated if you have a tuner. I actually don't have a tuner, so I tuned it or calibrated it by ear. So that entails playing a pitch and adjusting the trim pot on the Werkstatt, so the Werkstatt is outputting the same pitch as your reference pitch. Now, you will undoubtedly know if you're trying to tune two oscillators that as the pitches get closer together, you get a little beat frequency, a little sort of phasing effect. Now, this can be very nice and very desirable, and in fact, a lot of people do want to detune oscillators when they happen to produce a richer and fatter sound. But in most cases, you want this to be a choice. You would really like the oscillators to line up exactly so you can detune them yourself if you want to. Now, in this case, I really struggled to remove the beating exactly. It was pretty close, and that is what I've ended up with, and you may hear some of this in the demo, which I shall do later on. But that took me a long time. But I'm going to put that down to my poor ears and so on, and the lack of a tuner. You may have better luck. But that is just something which you hopefully only have to do once. But it is something which you may have to do if your Werkstatt is not perfectly calibrated. Okay, so why did I buy one? Well, as you may know, if you have seen some of my other videos, I have a Moog Grandmother. Now that is also a fairly simple synthesizer in the sense that it has two oscillators. It has one LFO, one filter and one ADSR, and sometimes it would be nice if you had more than one of each. So essentially I bought this as an expander for the Grandmother. Now it doesn't quite turn it into a matriarch. A matriarch has 4 oscillators and other features as well, but perhaps it turns it into a Grandstatt. I don't know. 3 oscillators. It now has 2 envelope generators. This isn't a fully-fledged ADSR, but it has an envelope generator and an LFO. They're very simple controls, but these patch points do allow you to do many interesting things with this by adding it to the Grandmother. Of course, you can add this to anything else, to the DFAM, to a Mother 32, or to any other modular system. So I got this as a Grandmother expander. So if you have any thoughts on the Werkstatt, positive or negative, or if you're using it a particular way with particular pieces of equipment, if you have any interesting ways of using it, then please do let me know and leave a comment down below. So here's a couple of simple demos which I produced with the Grandmother and the Werkstatt. They're not very long. See what you think. So here we are with the Grandmother and the Werkstatt. The setup is almost identical to the one proposed by Moog in the Grandmother and Werkstatt video. Essentially there's the keyboard out from the Grandmother going into the VCO exponential FM in, which is a wonderful name for the VCO input. It's essentially where the control voltage for the oscillator goes. The gate out from the Grandmother goes to the gate in on the Werkstatt, and the VCO out I have connected to the noise input on the Grandmother. So if we turn up the noise control, we should hear the Werkstatt. Wonderful. So now the Grandmother has 3 oscillators. So what can we do with this? Well, I have tuned the Werkstatt to a minor third above oscillator 1. I won't do the tuning live. It is not the easiest thing to do. It is very sensitive, and it's not difficult, but it is sensitive. You can add, if you want to do the mod thing, you can add a fine-tune circuit to the Werkstatt. However, so I have tuned the Werkstatt to a minor third above oscillator 1. So there's oscillator 1. That was the third, minor third above. So that's near enough for jazz, as they say. And I have tuned oscillator to a fifth above oscillator 1. So together they produce a minor chord. Here's the minor third from the Werkstatt. And here's the fifth. Get the volumes right. Near as possible. So there we have a chord. We have a triad coming from the Grandmother with the help of the Werkstatt, so we can play chords. And let's bring in the arpeggiator. Add a little reverb. Reverb. Let's undo that. random tunes using minor chords, switch it to random. So there we are. It's a simple demonstration of how you can add a third oscillator, a third voice to the Grandmother using the Werkstatt. Okay, so what else can we do with it? It has an Lfo output which you can plug into any input on the Grandmother and see what happens. Here I've plugged it into the attenuator just so we have some control over the depth, and I plugged it into the FM input of oscillator 2, which is the only one which is active here. So as we increase the LFO, we can control the amount with the attenuator. So let's just play a little arpeggio pattern and fiddle with these controls. So you can get some interesting sounds out of this. So I did leave the camera running while I was fiddling about with the Werkstatt and the Grandmother, and this last example features the Werkstatt's audio output, which I plugged into the Grandmother's reverb, and it produces some interesting soundscapes. So I hope you found that interesting and perhaps piqued your interest in the Werkstatt, whether to get one or whether not to. If you watched this video and made a choice, and whatever it is, then I'd be interested to know your reasoning and your decisions for making that choice. I'm sure it would be helpful to other people as well. And if you did enjoy this video, you know what I'm going to ask you to do next. Yes, please hit the big red subscribe button and ring the bell so you get informed of new videos when I release them. Click the big thumb, it really does help. But as always, I really do appreciate you taking the time to watch these videos and the little bits of music which may or may not appear in them. So for that, thank you very much indeed, and I will see you again in the next one.